Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Jason Howell and I have three excellent conversations. We start out by talking to Paris Chandler, the founder of Black Tech Pipeline, about Black Tech Pipeline and the hashtag Black Tech Twitter. Then we talk with Joshua Adams of Medium's 1.0 publication about Facebook actually being a platform where you might be able to change someone's mind. Before we round things out with a discussion about his upcoming book and how memes might be a great way to disseminate information. And then we have a discussion with Nathan Sheard of the Electronic Frontier Foundation about how you can protect your devices and lock things down when you're out protesting or just want to make sure that your devices are secure. All of that and so many tidbits of goodness coming up on this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. Tech News Weekly is brought to you from TWiT's LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? Well, LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether they're working in the office or remote. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 136, recorded Thursday, June 4th, 2020.
Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am Mikah Sargent.
And I'm Jason Howell. Good to see you, Mikah.
Good to see you too, pal. Jason Howell, the pal.
That could be your new nickname for me. I'm fine with
it. Cool. I'm glad you like it. I have to say I'm pretty excited today. We are joined by a speaker, a front-end developer, and the founder of Black Tech Pipeline. It's Paris Athena. Welcome to the show, Paris.
Hi, thanks. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, we are pumped to have you here. So let's talk about Black Tech Pipeline. What is it, and what would you like the listeners to know about Black Tech Pipeline?
Yeah, so Black Tech Pipeline is this service-based platform where I provide resources, community, and opportunity to Black technologists in the tech industry. So I work with employers and opportunity extenders, and I connect them with talent within my database. And my new website's coming soon. That's the temporary one.
Yeah. So opportunity extenders. Could you explain that to me?
Yeah, so I define opportunity extenders as people who want to maybe collaborate, so just like you can market tech products, they want people within my community to market their products, and they get like a referral fee. So I don't really know how else to name them except saying they're opportunity extenders, because you're getting an opportunity to have another stream of income. I work with conference organizers to work with speakers within my pipeline. So there's just a bunch of different opportunities. So I just overall call them opportunity extenders.
Yeah, I like that. So let's talk about how Black Tech Pipeline came about and the Black Tech Twitter hashtag. So I think one of the things that is really kind of fascinating is seeing a social media movement kind of grow. And I love to hear those stories of how these things began. So tell us about how this all came about, including, you've got the story here on the site, on Black Tech Pipeline site.
Yeah, so it was a total accident. I had been on Twitter just sort of talking about my tech journey, looking for a job. And it was on Twitter that I noticed there was a small Black community of technologists. And I wasn't aware of that because at least where I live in Boston, and there's a huge lack of Black representation within these tech companies. So when I saw that there was a small community, I had put out that tweet asking, what does Black Twitter in tech look like? And it just happened to catch fire, and a bunch of Black technologists from all over the world ended up replying to it. And then it formed this big community. And so now here we are.
Very cool. Yeah. So I see you've got an Airtable here with a talent database. What are some of the other ways that the community can kind of join in? I think that I saw there's a Slack. What are all of the ways that the community can kind of join?
Yeah, so we have a Slack community, we have a Discord community, we have a bot for the Black Tech Twitter hashtag. So if you want to keep up with literally anyone doing anything in Black Tech Twitter and they use the hashtag, you will see it. So you can go and follow them. You can follow anyone within our thread. And so, yeah. And we'll be launching our new platform in a few weeks. And that'll be another source where you can go and connect with the community.
Yeah. So, of course, you sent out this original message as you were kind of noticing that you were looking for other people in your industry. I suppose I'm curious, there have been times where I've put out a message and suddenly that message takes off and it can be kind of, is this the message that's going to really go out there? Is this and then it always ends up being maybe one that I wasn't expecting. Going into this, were you hoping to form a community, or was this kind of something that came about, just suddenly you realized, wow, I can do something with this?
Yeah, that was not my intention at all. I didn't think it would catch fire or catch any attention at all because I had a really, really low follower count. So this was just totally unintentional. But and it took me a while, even when it was kind of going viral and gaining traction, it took me a minute to realize, I think I just did something. So yeah, total accident.
I kind of like those moments, I have to say. So let's say, someone is interested in getting involved. Someone wants to be a part of the group. What is sort of the process that you kind of recommend? Is it, you definitely want to join the Slack, or you want to join the Discord, or is it everything? Should they follow along on Twitter? Kind of what's the process by which they can get involved with this?
Yeah, so I usually tell everyone to go on Twitter, go on to bot Black Tech. That's the bot for Black Tech Twitter. That's the page. And if you go on there and follow the bot, then you're going to get connected with anyone in Black Tech Twitter. You can go to the thread on my page and get connected with anyone in Black Tech Twitter. And from there, you will find, we have a newsletter. And in that newsletter, it'll point you to the Slack channel, the Discord channel, the website. And so, yeah, you kind of just, when you find one source, you find them all.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what I've noticed as I was looking through, is that it's very easy to kind of get access to everything. Are there ways for allies to support this organization? Is it a matter of sharing the fact that it's out there? Are there places to donate? How can people kind of help out with this?
Yeah, so it's different because I've worked with different companies who have hired out of my community, and this has all been done really informally. I've worked with companies literally through my Twitter DMs where I'm recruiting for them and getting them, sending over candidates, them hiring, people who I send over. And then I think just talking about it, making people aware that there is a newsletter, that there is this community that exists out there, using the hashtag, recommending that their network work with us. I think that's the best way to support us. Cool.
Yeah. So from my perspective, I mean, obviously we're in the midst of a very big moment right now. A whole lot of awareness around rights, around Black rights. A lot of awareness around kind of the injustice tied to that. And it's obviously very important. How has this effort kind of tied in with the awareness that's being generated in other facets of the internet, specifically Twitter? I'm seeing so much activity on Twitter right now. How is Black Tech Pipeline kind of feeding into that overall effort right now?
Yeah, so I'm actually using the newsletter to talk about how to support your Black employees during times of protest. And Perfect. I just put out another newsletter today on, it's nice when companies give a statement and they donate to, different types of Black organizations, but it doesn't stop there. the tech industry is still causing harm to the Black community in different ways. And so I made a newsletter today talking about it and, what to do. If you really want to be an ally, these are the steps you need to take. And so we've been just offering our voices. It's been Black Tech Twitter, talking as a collective and our allies listening to us and, promoting anything we say so that the word gets around.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I guess this one final question for you, and it's less a question and more an invitation here. We have to, I feel, take every opportunity that we can to not only speak up and speak out for ourselves as Black folks, but also to find the opportunity to elevate other voices whenever we can. And so this is just a moment where, you completely have the floor. And if there's anything that, you want to say, then I hope that you would.
Yeah. So, I guess I want to rephrase what I kind of said in my newsletter today. As I said, making statements and giving donations is great and it's necessary, but there are other steps that you need to take. If you're a tech company, I want to know, what are you building and is it harmful? And, who's building it? Does everyone look the same? How do they think? Where do they come from? What is their background? You want to make sure that, underserved communities, people who look differently, think differently, come from different places are all working, to build something so that everyone can use it and so that it's not so harmful to communities who are forgotten about because they're not in the room. They need to be at the table. So make sure you're doing your work to find these communities. We are out there. You can use the internet just to find us. There's Google, there's the social media platforms. Work with us, engage with us, build relationships with us. We're here. We want allies. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. I want to thank you so much, of course, for joining us today, Paris. Of course, we will include links in the show notes for folks to check out Black Tech Pipeline and to find the proper accounts on Twitter. But if folks want to follow you online and follow along with your work, where do they go to do that?
You can follow me on Twitter at Paris Athena. And right in my bio will be the newsletter and our website. You can follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn. And same with Black Tech Pipeline. It's BT Pipeline on Twitter and Instagram. Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time. We do appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Paris.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
We appreciate all you're doing. All right. So if you've been following the news, you've certainly seen a whole lot about Facebook in the last couple of days, past week or so. Twitter, of course, made the move last week to begin adding labels to some of President Trump's most recent dangerous tweets. Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg has continued to hold steady that Facebook would not take similar action, would not follow in Twitter's footsteps in this regard. And they're catching a lot of heat for that, both from the public as well as internally. That might actually push some people away from the platform. But joining us to talk about why Facebook might actually be a better platform for educating more broadly than Twitter on racial injustice is Joshua Adams, who this morning published an article on this topic for Medium's 1-0. Welcome to the show, Joshua.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It is really great to see you, and thank you for taking the time to talk with us about this. So first of all, there's so much information. It almost feels like information overload at this moment. You open up Twitter, it can be kind of overwhelming looking at the stream of information and learning what we are. But you write about context collapse as it relates to Twitter's character limits specifically, but I'm sure there is more to this. Talk a little bit about how that ultimately limits the message when it's delivered on a platform like Twitter.
Yeah, so I mean, even though I did mention the character limit, I did want to say that all mediums have this problem, all platforms have this problem. One of the analogies I give when I'm teaching this kind of concept in class is think about language. So like on one hand, we're speaking English. The amount of things that we can say at any given moment, even though it seems that it can be infinite, it actually is bounded by the amount of, words that we actually have at our disposal. And so like platforms, to use a different analogy, you can think of it as like a camera taking a picture. So, no matter how much you can kind of get inside of a picture, there's still things that are outside of the frame. So again, I'm just using these examples to illustrate the point that all platforms have these issues. What it pertains to Twitter in specific is that we have to try to get out our ideas in the most kind of like pithy and confined area, do it in the most, the shortest amount of time. But that actually creates a certain context collapse in terms of how people are perceiving our messages. And so let me kind of walk you through an example. So, obviously on Twitter, there's only, and again, any platform to be fair, but on Twitter, there's only a certain amount of context that you can actually give in any one tweet. And so, I say a statement that's political. Obviously, politics is on a spectrum, but let's just say I say some political statement that is pro-Democrat, pro-Republican, whatever, it will fit on. So on one side, whatever I say, the people who agree with me, the people who are coming from that that ideological, philosophical, et cetera, so forth, experiential perspective, they're going to take what I said as the most precise, representative kind of distillation of what they believe, right? They're like, oh, right, me, I believe that too, and they retweet, right? But let's think about how that is viewed on the other side. The same exact tweet saying the same exact thing when viewed from the other side is the least precise thing. It has the least amount of context. It's a caricature, and to a certain extent, it doesn't even have the improper amount of context. It has the wrong context. So it's the same exact thing, except depending on where you're coming from, it's read in a totally fundamentally different way. In terms of, what Twitter's, the limits there, also I actually would say just, and I know this might seem a little bit arbitrary to folks, but I would actually say literally the actual visual space, is certain limited. So just before this interview, I just and obviously it's not scientific or precise, but I went on Facebook and I tried to think about how much space does one post take versus on Twitter, how much space does one post take. So in the same amount of space that only one post took on Facebook, you could fit about 2 to 4 posts on Twitter. And so what that does is on Facebook, at least if you are looking at something, especially if something that has a video or a photo, attached to it, it's going to stop the eye, or has the better potential to stop the eye than just a cascade of information. And so again, those are just some of the limitations, the only limitations. But there's just some of the ways that we use Twitter and share, information on Twitter. Yes, it has its certain advantages, but in the article, I'm just making the case that if you actually want to teach people about things, you want to do that kind of really hard work of persuasion, then Facebook may be the better platform. And there's a bunch of different reasons for that.
Yeah, and I mean, when talking about the strengths of platforms, Twitter has been forced to evolve because its users created kind of this process of, hey, this is not enough characters to say, dive deep into this topic. So they end up doing the threading. It's a feature that essentially Twitter added after users were forcing the platform to allow for this. Meanwhile, Facebook totally allows for this. Is there, in your view, is there the potential of kind of almost adding too much context for the efficacy of the platform? Facebook allows for a lot more. But does that run the risk of turning someone away from that information instead of pulling them into it? I hope that's clear, but I don't know.
No,
what do you think about that?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. So there is, and again, this is, I think some of the things that we're going to be talking about, and I feel like I'm, going to be kind of like a broken record on this. All platforms have certain limitations. They all have certain benefits. They all have certain affordances, but they all have certain kind of confines. And so what I would say, to that is like, I think we should also think about context, not just merely as information, but we can also think about it as space. And even though I am making a case in the article that you can give more information, I'm not saying that the information should necessarily be, just so much or limitless, right? You can't make a length long Facebook post. No one's going to read, a Facebook post that's actually visually pages long. But I do think the type of kind of context as space, space as context, to revise, is important. And so, again, I just think it's helpful to, and even analogies have their own flaws, but analogies help people understand things. So, when you walk into the gym, you're going to be wearing different things than if you walk into class. When you get on social media kind of broadly, we use social media to communicate. We look to, access information, look at share articles, look at videos of cats. One of my favorite animals is otters. So I just love looking at pictures of otters. But one of the other things is identity formation. And so we get to use these digital spaces to curate our identity in a certain way that we can't in real life. And so while I'm not saying that there's some overlap between how people use Twitter and Facebook, I would argue that because people on Facebook tend to be more people in your personal life, more so than on Twitter, they're more so in kind of like your professional life. And again, I'm somewhat making a truism, a generalization. But I hope people, take me in good faith. And so in the context of, Twitter, if you are trying to explain a certain issue, especially if your Twitter profile is not set on private, this is also kind of where context collapse coming in, right? So I tweet out something, potentially, 300, million people can see what I tweeted. Potentially. On Facebook, people tend to kind of set their private settings on, personal limit, to a certain extent. And so my circle is, even though it's somewhat counterintuitive, there's like 2 billion more people on Facebook, but the circles are more intimate. And so if I'm an activist and I'm trying to, explain to someone my experience with police, so like give them an interaction, a negative interaction I have with police, or a positive, whatever it is. But if I'm trying to explain an experience that I have with police officers on Twitter, not only am I speaking to my intended audience, I'm also speaking to people who are coming from the exact ideological perspective as me. I'm talking to bots and I'm talking to fake profiles. I may be talking to, white supremacists posing as black people. I might be talking to Russian bots, et cetera, so forth. Mm-hmm. If I'm on Facebook, and again, I'm somewhat overgeneralizing, but I just want to simplify it for other people to understand it. If I'm on Facebook, I'm talking to my friends, my family, and their friends and their family, and to whatever, exponent that you want to go out to, right? And so if somebody looks at my Facebook post, they have to see me. They have to see my face. They can't make me just a negative example of whatever they're trying to think of. They actually have to kind of approach me as a person. And again, it's not to the same extent that they would have to in real life. Like literally they see me, face to face, none of this stuff, can substitute for face-to-face interaction. But I do think there's a certain context in which, people go on Facebook to, argue. They also go on Facebook to look at cats, share memes. One of the very dominant, kind of uses of Twitter is, irony and outrage. Irony on the left is what's going to get you kind of the most retweets on the right outrages. And to a certain extent, both of those would function in reverse as well. But I do think the actual spaces of Twitter and Facebook are different. And so that's also an extra context that we need to think about.
So last thing, you are working on a book right now about the Black experience in tech, and you actually published an excerpt from the book on Medium about the intersection between memes and Black English. So from your perspective, how is it that the meme culture that you wrote about is showing up in this moment? How is that meme culture playing a role right now?
So, I mean, I would say, memes are, as it particularly pertains to, all the things that are going on now, whether it's the COVID-19 pandemic or the protests, against police brutality, the subsequent riots, and things like that. Memes are a really expressive way for people to, promote their own political commentary. Mm-hmm. The power in memes actually comes from a combination of the visual and the juxtaposition between the visual and whatever words you're attaching to it. So just a visual in and of itself isn't a meme. You need, those words. The words kind of recontextualize it. And so obviously if you're trying to say something funny, you use words that are ironic, maybe have certain kind of cultural or subcultural allusions. So I'm wearing a Scott Pilgrim shirt, and if I said, you made me swallow my gum, if you watched the movie before, you would get that reference. If you saw that meme, if you didn't watch the movie before, then obviously you wouldn't get the reference. One of the downsides of meme use, and I guess it's kind of on the same, it's kind of a heads and tails thing. One of the downsides of memes is that they are often very, very powerful forms of propaganda and disinformation. Mm-hmm. In this case, I actually do mean propaganda in a negative sense. I don't necessarily mean it in the, I usually try to use that word only in the academic sense. So propaganda just means kind of trying to propagate a certain idea. But in a negative sense, what memes allow people to do is they allow people to repurpose visual text for their own purposes. And so if someone took a picture at the protest and someone is destroying a police officer, one person could create destroying a police officer's car. Mm-hmm. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Right. Destroying a police officer's car. One person can take that picture and create a meme saying, the revolution has started, it gets likes, retweets, and such and so forth. Another person takes that exact meme, that exact picture, creates a meme and says, look at these animals, but you want us to believe that your life matters, right? That's the same exact, information, the same exact visual. But when you repurpose it, you could actually, use that visual for, your own, political, ideological, et cetera, so forth purposes. So while I do, memes are very powerful, as someone who uses the internet as a journalist, academic, as just an everyday consumer. I love memes. Memes can definitely brighten up your day. But in terms of the spheres in which misinformation and disinformation are being spread, memes, I would almost argue in my academic sense that memes are probably the most powerful form of disinformation and propaganda. So we need to understand it and be mindful of that.
It's fascinating. I would say that my group chat with my family, I can literally open it up on my computer right now and scroll through, and the vast majority of the conversations that we have there are in memes, and especially talking about the situation right now. I think one of the benefits of it is the way that it can sort of take a big idea and condense it down into something that is easily understood. And definitely. When it does that, I think that that's when it can be powerful, because I can remember, you come across a few and you go, oh my God, that's the point I've been trying to make, but I've never made it so succinctly. And I find those to be very powerful. But I do wonder if it's less powerful in terms of communicating to another group, and more powerful just in sort of preaching to the choir, so to speak, because at the same time, I can remember seeing when, there's the conversation about, it's not even a conversation, but when someone doesn't understand Black Lives Matter and they suggest that all lives matter as if that's not the same thing. And when that conversation comes. Yes, exactly. And you have those memes, but then when there are folks that are trying to argue that that all lives matter is a better representation, I know that even in myself, I see a meme, being shared from that argument, from that standpoint. And I immediately go, okay, I'm not going to be able to understand this because it doesn't make sense. And so I wonder then if folks have the same idea on the other side, where they see me trying to explain to them what this means and why this is important to say. And then they look at it and they go, oh, I'm not going to get it. I don't understand it. So it almost feels like maybe memes are good ways to sort of have conversations with people who are like-minded. But do you feel that they can be means? Can memes be means of conveying a message to another group?
Oh, definitely. And I mean, there's, as you said, like, memes are powerful in a way that they kind of like condense these like really big and complex and nuanced ideas and distill them into this like bite-sized thing that people can easily digest. I do think that, like, for example, those like that one meme that like explains Black Lives Matter. And there's like a person talking about like all houses matter when, their house is on fire. And so there's a way that you can explain this concept. I just would say that we just need to understand, and maybe this is like somewhat indirectly maybe it's not answering your question, but I do feel like we need to understand that like people are also using the same type of format that we, honestly and objectively are saying that it distills this idea in a very simple way. On the other hand, you could make someone believe something that is demonstratively false by making it simple. And so, for example, let's just say we're talking about like crimes committed by illegal immigrants or undocumented workers. If you were somebody who comes from a political bent and, you don't want more immigration, you could make a meme, right? You could scour, because we can search this stuff. So you can scour the internet. You really only need to find one example of an undocumented immigrant doing a crime. You don't need to find a bunch. You just need to find one example. You can make up statistics and then just put those statistics on the picture and say, undocumented immigrants are responsible for 50% of the crime. And then you put out that meme. The fact that it's true or not actually is not the point. When you see the statistic and then you see the person committing the crime, if you're already coming from that, that experience, that ideological, that philosophical, that political, et cetera, so forth background, you're not even going to check to see if the stats are correct, because the meme is already giving you what you wanted. You kind of, it's truthy. It's not truth, but it feels true. It doesn't matter if it is true. It just feels true. And so you share it. One of the examples that I give in my classes, and it's somewhat of like a trick that I pull on students. Someone made a meme in which they actually were trolling Blue Lives Matter, people who support Blue Lives Matter. And so in the meme, there was a picture, I believe the officer's name was Eric Dorner, but a few years back, he actually went on as an African-American officer, and he went on a shooting rampage and killed a few officers. And in the meme, it's like, if you would, you should support this fallen soldier and share this picture. Now, in context, it had like a Blue Lives Matter flag. It had an American flag. He was in like uniform and such and so forth. If you're coming from that background, you're not even going to be thinking about like, oh, wait, who is this person? Really, should I be serving? Should I be, retweeting this? Should I be sharing this? No, the thing that you're going to think is, well, I support the police. I support the military. I support the American flag. So of course I'm going to share this, not even knowing that you just shared a meme of a dude who went on a shooting rampage and killed a bunch of police officers. And so, memes, because, and again, it's the visual context and, the textual, it is that juxtaposition and the meaning that's great between those two. Memes can be a thing that could help persuade people, and it's not going to persuade everybody, but it is a thing that can help persuade people. But it also could be, a very effective way to propagandize, people as well. And so, I think that just as, internet users, social media users, people use this stuff every day, we just always just be mindful and try to be aware of, how some of the tools, some of the things that we're looking at every day could, be, effective. But again, effective could be, kind of either way. Effective could be, helping people to the best extent. Effective can also be, burning their house down, because obviously fire would be the most effective thing to burn. So,
yeah. Sorry, I want to make sure that you got the last part of that message in. I want to thank you so much. You've given us quite a bit of your time, and we do appreciate it. There's a lot going on, and so thank you. If folks would like to follow you online, how can they do so?
So they can follow me on Journo Joshua. So Journo, like journalist, Journo, Joshua. And you could just hit me up on there. I'm actually taking a few months off to write a book. Right now I teach at Salem State, but I'm actually going to be leaving at the end of the semester to just focus on the book and writing and some other creative projects. I actually want to create a podcast, so this is some practice for me, and a YouTube channel. But yes, you can primarily follow me on Twitter. And again, it's Journo Joshua.
Excellent. Well, thank you so very much for joining us today, Joshua Adams, and thank you for your excellent writing. And I can't wait to check out the book whenever it's out, and the podcast and the YouTube too. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. So many people are obviously they're taking to the streets. They're making their voices heard right now. It's important to be sure that they can do this safely, both from a physical perspective as well as a digital perspective. It used to be that you could actually protest quite easily anonymously, for the most part, at least by comparison. Today, we all carry around a computer in our pocket, and that increases the complexity of this situation. That phone is broadcasting who we are, where we're going, where we came from, to anyone who happens to know how to pick up that information. And you want to protect yourself as far as that's concerned. So Nathan Sheard is lead organizer for the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And Nathan is joining us today to talk about how you can protect yourself in these demonstrations, and really appreciate your time. We love the work that the EFF is doing. Welcome to the show, Nathan.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So good to get you here. So first of all, explain why it is so important to look at digital self-defense right now and kind of before leaving the house. This isn't something that you do like after the fact. There's a lot of work that needs to be done prior to even leaving to participate. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, first I would say that one of the key missions for Electronic Frontier Foundation is making sure that people have the freedom to assemble and to share their voice with folks without concern about government repression or warrantless surveillance. And so we stand really strongly behind the folks that are out in the streets that are engaging in exactly that activity. But we keep in mind also that one of the things that they're out there to call attention to are failures and disparities in the justice system. So it's important to make sure that we're also providing resources that meet that need and identify that sometimes we need real protections where legal protections are not sufficient. And so that's why having things like the surveillance self-defense guide that give people information on how things that they can do, and like you said, important things like think about before you even leave your home and like while you're there, and things to do in afterwards to protect and identify that the choices that you're making are privacy is a team sport. So the choices that you're making are not only about how you protect your own privacy and your own security, but also all the other folks that you're out there and standing in solidarity with.
Yeah, indeed. It's a great walkthrough, a whole lot of points highlighted in there, which we're going to talk about a few of those right now, but definitely people should check this out, EFF.org, and read it for yourself, especially if you plan on participating or you have been. This can be a way to kind of possibly enhance or correct kind of your actions going in so you can protect yourself. How important is, like I see on a lot of these lists, people are mentioning you want to have some sort of a secondary device or a burner device, not using your primary phone. And I can understand why, but explain a little bit how this actually protects someone to use a secondary device instead of their primary one.
Yeah, so frequently we'll go back to this fact is like for every person, it's going to be a different mixture around like balancing cost and convenience and security and privacy. And for some folks, they are going to make the decision that there's the information, the data that's on their normal day-to-day device is of such potential. There's such the threat of it falling into unintended hands, be it law enforcement or otherwise, is so sufficient that it's not safe for them to carry that device with them. And so in that case, a burner phone can be really helpful. And one of the things that we benefit from here in the United States, that's not the case around the world, is that currently federal regulation doesn't require you to show ID or to purchase a prepaid phone or a SIM card, although some state laws do differ there. And so if folks that do make that calculation to like not take their personal everyday device, but to get a prepaid phone or, sometimes you call it a burner phone, it's important also to remember though that the location of mobile devices can be determined by cell phone towers. And so if you want to keep your ID, so if you're using that method to also kind of obscure your identity or make it more difficult for folks to identify where you've been on a day of action or during a protest, make sure that they're turning off their device, their location data before they leave their home, and not turning it back on till they return home, or if they're turning it off before they leave their home and turn it back on at the action, to make sure they're turning it off again before they go to any place that can be identified with them. That's going to kind of like reduce that level of anonymity that the burner phone is providing, and never keeping their burner phone and their normal phone in the same place where they might be, their locations could be correlated and potentially used to identify them in that way as well.
Right. And I've also read kind of the idea of leaving a primary device not only home, but on and home. That way it's registered there, right? And in the ways that you're talking about, location, all this kind of stuff, just as further protection. But again, making sure not to cross those wires is very important. Now, if they do have to, if someone does have to leave their house with their primary device, what are a few of the kind of mandatory, like, all right, you better be doing this at the very least, sort of actions that they should be taking on that device?
Yeah, and to build on the point that you just made about leaving your normal device at home, that's an important point. I'm glad that you brought up, because a lot of times when investigators or agencies are looking to identify what someone's movements, they are also looking for anomalies. And so if you've got your phone on every day normally, and then all of a sudden on this one particular day of action, your phone is all of a sudden off, that is going to raise a red flag. But to move to your question around the things that you can do if you are making the choice to take your normal device with you to an action. One thing that's important to do, and I actually would recommend this even if you weren't going to a particular protest, or is making sure that your device is you're using full disk encryption, so that the information that's on your data is securely protected. Luckily, iPhones and most of the more recent Androids all do this by default, but making sure that, especially particularly if you have an older phone, that you are going through the steps that you would need to protect your device in that way. Turning off Face ID and fingerprint locking is another really good one. It's super convenient. I use the Face ID on normal days, but certainly when I'm somewhere where I might be more likely to engage with law enforcement, so whether that be crossing a border or participating in a protest, even though again it's a First Amendment protected activity, I would recommend turning off your Face ID or your fingerprint unlock. The law is still there's still kind of in flux around the kind of protections that you have and being compelled to open your device using biometric data, where it's much more firmly and kind of really in place and has right now less arguable risks involved with using a passcode that you remember, and especially a passcode that's strong, like an 8 digits or more, to be able to open your device, to make so that way you're making sure that data that you're using, that full disk encryption, and it's securely protected against brute force attacks that might be otherwise susceptible to. And using Signal or some other type of end-to-end encrypted communication device format, rather, SMS texts, regular text messages that people send are sent in clear text and can be potentially compromised either by the use of cell site simulators or simply because of cooperation, compelled or otherwise, between your service provider and law enforcement and accessing that information. And so using something like Signal, where even if that information is accessed, even if the data is intercepted, it's going to be in a way that's not readable by anyone. And again, thinking about the fact that you may not have things in your communication that you're particularly concerned about, but you're making choices for everyone else that you communicate with. And so taking the proactive step of sharing and also making sure that other folks that you are communicating with are using those types of encrypted communications is important. And luckily also, we're talking about having these passcodes that are 8 digits or more, so that can be really difficult if you're in a space where you see something that you really think it's important to be filming or taping. Having to type that in every time is going to be kind of a deterrent or make it more difficult for you. iPhones and a lot of the newer Androids do allow you to take photos or video without unlocking your device, which is also going to be more safe if your device should be taken from you or should fall. At least all of the other information that is on that device won't be accessible, other than the ability to take photos. And so with an iPhone, you can do that by holding on to, firmly pressing on the camera icon, or with an Android. Some of the newer ones I know, like double pressing the power button, often will do that. So making sure before you leave the house that you understand, that you're familiar with how to do that on your device is going to be pretty critical. And being mindful of, if you're taking photos, being mindful of the people that are in those photos, and not, trying to not. I would suggest not taking photos that show identifiable traits, people's faces or tattoos or unique colored hair or clothing. But there are apps like Obscure Cam by the Guardian Project, or Image Scrubber, that's available both on iOS and Android, that can help you after the fact to be able to obscure images and remove metadata that could potentially put folks at risk. And finally, I would also recommend using airplane mode on your phone, and to prevent, as another way of preventing the location tracking. And so there are some apps that will allow you to use navigation without having network access. And since GPS itself is actually, is just a receive-only system, that is, so if you have an app that uses GPS to help you navigate, provided that you've already downloaded beforehand the maps that would need to be able to be in place to work with that could be helpful. But also keep in mind that even though GPS is receive-only, if your phone, so some devices will store location data. So making sure that, you again, having it being fully encrypted and if necessarily erasing that data after the fact, so it's not a potential risk to you or other folks that you care about.
Man, that is a good list. Very thorough. And, folks, like I said, definitely go to EFF.org, search out this kind of run through, because there's a lot of information there. And, I'm seeing actually a lot of this being shared today, which is and for the past couple of days, which is great, because this is important information. A lot of people might not consider this. It's just like, I want to participate. I want to make my voice heard. They're not necessarily thinking about how that computer that's in their pocket could potentially be used against them in this scenario. So I love what you guys are doing. EFF.org is where folks can find all this information and all of the posts that you guys are putting out about a whole number of efforts, including facial recognition, which we didn't really talk about, but there's a lot of movement happening right now in the facial recognition space. And, California almost had something go through yesterday that would have really impacted the ability of companies to lean into facial recognition. We're just realizing how dangerous that can be as this proliferates. So I love the work that you guys are doing. Nathan, if people want to follow you online, obviously they can find your work at EFF.org. If they want to follow you and your words, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Nash12, NASH12. And again, absolutely, at EFF.org, or about our face surveillance information at aboutfacenow.org. But yeah, thank you. And protect each other and stay safe and wash your hands.
That's right. Right. Indeed. Thank you so much, Nathan. We will talk to you soon. Appreciate your work. Take care. All right. That is it. And I only had one internet dropout, so thankfully that's good, strangely. Tech News Weekly publishes every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. That is the place where you can go to subscribe to this show each and every week. Twit.tv/TNW. You'll get the episodes delivered to you automatically, audio and video formats. Just go there and subscribe. We hope that you'll do that.
Yes. You can also be a part of the show by emailing us. It's tnw@twit.tv. And of course, follow us on social media at Twit on Twitter, at twit.tv on Instagram, at Twit Talk on TikTok. And if you want to follow me, I'm at Mikah Sargent on pretty much all of the social media platforms. Later today, it's appropriate that we ended with the conversation that we did. My Hands on iOS episode that will be out is about protecting your device should you be out and about, and also protecting yourself. So it's about the emergency SOS feature on iOS, as well as how to sort of lock down your device if you are concerned that someone might try to compel you to unlock it. So you can check that out a little bit later today. What about you, Jason?
Excellent. I'm at Jason Howell on Twitter, and my new episode of Hands on Android went up just right before showtime. Same thing. This is all, I feel like it's kind of like a united front right now, raising awareness on how to protect yourself. It's all about locking down Android. If you plan on participating in a protest, you want to protect yourself. A lot of the details that Nathan shared on this, just moments ago is in there, and how to do that within the Android operating system. So twit.tv/HOA, and you can find out how to kind of act on those suggestions that way. But I want to give a big thank you to John, who's running the board, but also, helps edit and turn around Tech News Weekly, Hands on iOS, Hands on Android. Today's a huge day for John. He's been so busy the last 24 hours, going back and forth on all of these episodes that we're turning around today. We feel like it's really important that these episodes are done properly, and he's ensuring that. So thank you for your hard work, John. Always appreciate the work. And thanks to Burke, who's in the studio engineering, and thanks to you for watching and listening and hopefully sharing this episode of Tech News Weekly. We'll all see you next week. Take care of yourselves and be safe.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Be sure to check out the other shows on the network, like my other show, Hands on Wellness. I love to share different tips and tricks that's going to help you get a better grasp on your personal wellness. Just go to twit.tv/how and subscribe now.